Okay, so, can everybody hear me?
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good, thank you. So everybody on the committee was emailed the agenda. One of the things that I'm gonna have the police department's gonna make a presentation on two things tonight. One is the questions, there have been written questions submitted by myself and by Don Hammond and some others about kind of police, well, questions about the policies and protocols and things like that. So we're gonna start by having the police department answer those questions. And for those, if you're not on the committee, this will all be posted tomorrow with the questions, but the police department's going to respond to them now, so you can hear them. And I guess this is gonna be taped, right? This will be able to be on the, and this meeting will also be available tomorrow on the town webpage. So, so Chief, you wanna start?
Yes, good evening, Supervisor. What we're gonna do is I'll go through number one on the agenda, and then Captain Shannon will handle number two on the agenda, and anything we need to clarify, we can both, participate in that, okay?
Okay.
All right, so we have quite a few questions. We have three different groups and people have submitted some that we'll go through. The first one I'll go through has to do with, it's just titled basically Task Force Meeting Questions. So I'll read you what the question was, and then I'll give a brief answer on to the question. Okay, at the beginning here, what types of statistics do you keep related to traffic stops? The Orangetown Police Department does keep track of summonses issued by officer and by vehicle and traffic offense type. We do not generate a statistical report based on that information. However, our new Spillman computer-aided dispatch software has the option to track by sex and gender. It doesn't track traffic violations by race. And that goes by New York State. What we have on a summons is all we're allowed to ask people for when we stop them. And race is not one of the things that we ask on a traffic stop, because that's probably considered a shorter term stop with the police. It's not like an arrest report where we would gather other information by the New York State arrest report and guidelines there. So for traffic stops, we don't gather any information on race. And the next question is, do you keep them by race and ethnicity? And that I just kind of answered that with it. We go by what New York State asks us to get information wise when we have traffic violations.
Okay, Chief, let me just real quick, just so when an officer stops, you keep record of who the officer was, what they stopped the person for, and basically their gender, it sounds like.
Well, also their address, their date of birth, but as far as information like race, gender, ethnicity, and that stuff, we don't.
Oh.
So, just what would be on a traffic summons is really all we take. That's the only information we gather at a traffic stop.
Okay, okay.
Okay. Do you keep tickets, warnings issued by race and ethnicity, the outcomes? What types of statistics do you keep on domestic violence calls? So again, we get that information from the New York State forms, domestic violence reports. There's a separate, several years ago, they went from New York State incident reports, they developed their own New York State domestic incident reports. And they're separated by the state because they want to be able to track that. That information gets sent to the state. And what they do with the statistical part of it, I'm not sure, but they're the ones that to come up with what information we're allowed to gather at those stops. So I would think if we were to try and gather additional info, if the state's not on board, it could be a little bit more intrusive than we're allowed to do. But arrest reports and domestic incident reports are a lot more information is gathered than on a traffic stop. Next question, how many people of color are on our police officers in the Orangetown Police Department? We currently have 2 Black sworn officers, 1 Asian officers, and 5 Hispanic sworn officers. What is the commitment to diversity and inclusion? What is their commitment to a diversity and inclusion, and do we have a goal to increase the number? As far as answering what those individual officers' commitment is to diversity and inclusion, I think that's beyond the scope of something that I would be able to get into. I don't know how committed they would be to that. That's not within my scope, I don't believe. And do we have a goal to increase that number? The Orangetown Police Department follows all civil service laws for the state of New York and the Rockland County Department of Personnel. The Orangetown Police Department sends recruitment information to areas of the community in an effort to increase interest in a police career in Orangetown. We have, over the past several exams, the exams come every 4 years. The past several, we have tried to make a bigger push in some of our communities that are less represented in the department. And we've changed the recruitment posters into different languages for, to try and reach a different community. And those are some of the things we have done. We have assisted with some of the county outreach to try and get more people to take the exam of all different groups. And I think the county personnel would maybe be better to know how many actually have signed up and taken the exam, because after it gets to that point, we really don't have an involvement in, whether or not they show up for the exam or where they come on a list, unless it comes on our police exam list. How many women police officers are in the department? We currently have 5 sworn female police officers and 7 civilian employees that are female. What is the racial gender makeup of the leadership of the Orangetown Police Department? We currently have 1 of our 19 supervisors is a female. What are the statistics? What types of statistics do you keep related to traffic stops? And again, that's just a repeat of the question that was at the beginning. Again, we gather the information that we record on summonses that are prepared by New York State, and those forms that when we do those arrests or those traffic summonses, they all do get sent to the state as well. What type of diversity and inclusion training? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just want to go back because, the question on the leadership of OPD, for people who don't know what that means, I mean, they may not know how many captains, whatever we have. So just for purposes of information, we have obviously 1 chief, we have 2 captains. How many lieutenants? I'm not even sure.
4 lieutenants.
4 lieutenants, okay.
13 sergeants. 13 sergeants.
13 sergeants, okay.
Or 12 sergeants.
12 sergeants.
12 sergeants.
Okay. Okay, just, it says leadership, that could, no one, I don't know if that means. So, okay, thank you. You can go on.
Okay. All right. What type of diversity and inclusion training is currently provided or attended? Is the training ongoing? And how has the training impacted policies and procedures? We did have a presentation, and we do have minutes from that presentation from Christopher Stratner, who is the director of the Rockland County Police Academy. As we move into 2021, there was actually an academy class started yesterday, and they have developed more of this type of inclusion policies and practices into their training, probably just about into every training they have there now. New York State gives a lot of guidance with that. One very positive is the director of the academy now. He has a strong background in, he was a paramedic as well. So there's a lot of safety and awareness that way with all the training that comes in, which is very helpful. I think we get a better, more well-rounded training when that's brought into pretty much everything we do up there. When we do train, does have that element in the safety of the citizens and the officer and everybody at the call. The next was, what is the demographic makeup of the police department? We currently have 77 members, 5 female, 72 male. We have 5 Hispanic and 72 non-Hispanic. We have 74 white, 2 black, and 1 Asian. What types of racial and ethnic sensitivity training are offered at the police academy? Again, I think the best would be to take a look at the presentation that Chris Stratner gave at one of our earlier meetings. And we could, we can produce that as well. I'm sure Chris would come back and and give another presentation if we needed him to. But it kind of goes back to that earlier question. And what types of training or promotional systems are in place to ensure higher ranking officials have ethnic and gender representation? And once again, we do follow the civil service laws of the state of New York and the Rockland County Department of Personnel. So that anything that we go through, we have to follow those procedures. And I don't really have anything further on that, but that's really how it goes. It goes by those standards as to where they appear on an exam. Then they would be whether or not they are reachable to be hired or promoted. Okay, next set of questions is what is the composition of the Police Reform Committee? We have that actually on the agenda. We have everybody's name. So that would be the easiest way to see what their name and what their organization are representing. How are they selected? The supervisor with input from myself, and actually I appreciate Mayor Hammond's input. We were able to get the coach from the Nyack football team has joined this committee, and I think that I appreciate his input there, that he came on about at the second or third meeting. I'm sorry.
And I just, Chief, I'm just going to jump in there. So the chief and I met and we tried to come up with, well, first of all, we had certain, pursuant to the executive order, certain requirements. We had to have people from certain organizations. So that was kind of put aside. And then we tried to find a cross section of people from the town. So we tried to get, someone, we got the pastor, someone, we had to ask someone from the Nyack Center to try and get some of the youth. So we tried to cover as many, areas as we could without making the committee unruly, like if it got to be too many people. So we kind of sat and we met and we kind of, expressed names or whatever, and then we reached out to everybody. So I'll let, so it was kind of a joint effort to try to cover as much ground. Certainly was not a perfect science to it, but we were kind of thrown at this and we had a short time frame, so it wasn't like we had time to do interviews and things like that. So anyway, so go ahead, Chief.
Okay, and it just quickly, I can kind of go through with some of the, this list here. You have the supervisor, myself, and Captain Shannon. Mr. Troy is a town councilman, but he also has, for many, many years, has represented the senior citizens and their issues. So that was a main reason why we wanted him involved. Mayor Hammond is the mayor of the village of Nyack. Dominic Crispino and Barbara Gianta are representing the district attorney. Tanya Gale legally represents the Nyack NAACP, and she's also a Rockland County public defender. John McGowan is a county legislator, and he also participates in our youth court. So we were looking to get somebody at the county level to assist in case we had issues there. Pastor McLaughlin is certainly, obviously he's representing some of the religious organizations in our community. Mr. Outlaw is a community resident. Nick Whalen is representing the Orangetown PBA, and Elizabeth Brancotti is the town's deputy town attorney that's assigned to this committee. Yes, Michael Lawler is a New York State Assemblyman. We have Mr. Jones is a Nyack, I believe he's a Nyack teacher. I'm not positive of that, but he's definitely the coach of the Nyack football team. And is he a teacher as well, Mayor? Yes. Okay, so he's also a teacher in the Nyack School District. And Ms. Carden is our clerk for the committee. She's taken all the notes and setting up all these meetings, so we appreciate all her effort. But that's kind of what we were trying to get a group that could represent as many people and groups that we could with individuals. Okay, what portion of the committee is comprised of persons who are BIPOC? And it's approximately 25% of the committee is. How many committee members depend on relationships with law enforcement or associated government agencies for salary or money of any kind? But I have down 6 because there's 6 that are considered law enforcement that are on the committee. There are other people, there are government officials, but I wouldn't say that they rely on law enforcement for their salary and money. So it would be, there are 6.
God help me if that was the case.
How many committee members depend on I'm sorry. Who is chairing the committee and what are the contact? Supervisor Kenny is the chair and myself is included in that within the state guidelines, but she as the supervisor would be the chair of the committee. Who are the attorneys providing legal counsel to the Police Reform Committee? That would be Ms. Brancati. She's the deputy town attorney, and the number would, and it asks for contact info. It would be 359-5100 would be to be able to contact the town attorney's office. Our meetings of the committee currently open to the public, and have they previously hosted meetings? Have the previously hosted meetings been open to the public? It's a yes and no. When we started early on, they weren't open to the public. We were trying to get some direction on how we were going to go. Our meeting in December was open to the public for comments. That was done on, as a virtual meeting as well. This meeting is open to public view. It's not necessarily open for back and forth comments. And the February 16th meeting is proposed to be open to the public for comments as well, just like the December meeting was. But we just have to finalize that date with the supervisor. Where is information published or circulated about these meetings? It's all of the minutes of the meetings and the dates that they were are published on the Orangetown website. If you just go to the town of Orangetown, you can see that and all the minutes that we've had from each of the meetings. How much notice was provided before each meeting? I would say roughly a couple of weeks. I don't know if it's been a set amount of time. Some of them seem to be longer in between, but I would say probably about 2 weeks would be the average. Are minutes taken from every meeting? Yes, they are, and they are posted on the Orangetown website. Are the forms recorded? They currently, I believe this one is being recorded. The earlier ones were not recorded, even the one that was open to the public, but there are official minutes to each of the meetings.
The other, Chief, the one that was in December, that was recorded, and that's.
Oh, was. Okay, so the public one was as well. Okay, and that's all, that all can be found on the website.
Yep.
So that answers the next portion of the next question. Have any members of the public or the panel been muted? Everybody who wanted to participate in the open public one was given an opportunity. Nobody was muted. I mean, we do have people, I guess technically they are muted because just for some organizational purposes, but when people need to speak, they're given an opportunity to speak. What efforts are being made to get authentic input from the general public? We have postings on the town website. The supervisor does have an email that can be sent direct, email address that comments and questions can be sent directly to her. Some groups have made presentations to the committee. I believe there was one group that was going to, and maybe then for whatever reason had to cancel. But there have been different ways that people have gotten in touch with it. And I think always to be able to send the supervisor an email if you didn't feel comfortable coming to a meeting or speaking it openly in the public, you can certainly send questions and I can assure you that the supervisor makes sure that they get answered. How is public input being incorporated into changes made around policing? All suggestions and comments and ideas will certainly be considered. As the supervisor has said, and you see in the Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative handbook, sometimes there's a financial thing that comes into play here that may either take a little longer to get things done. Some things may just be too cost prohibitive, but all ideas certainly are going to be considered, and if it would work, we would certainly love to get them into our policies and procedures as well. All right, what is your schedule to make the EO 203 committee's report public? The schedule is it's got to be done by April 1st. So by March 21st, by March of 2021, we would certainly look to have presentations that would have gone through the town board and to be open to the public to see and review before that April 1st deadline. And the last question is, has any money been paid to Lexipol? That answer is no. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not even sure what they would be used for, but we haven't even considered that as part of this committee. Then the supervisor also has several questions. Some of them have been part of this other group, so we can go through them. Does OPD or other law enforcement agencies in Rockland County use other agencies to address situations that fall within the expertise of other professionals? For example, calls involving individuals with mental illness. The Rockland County, we currently use the BERT team, which is the Behavioral Health Response Team. It's a county-wide group that'll come out. They do have, we found through these committee meetings, they certainly do have some financial constraints that hamper them. So that's something that we, as a committee, are looking into and are aware of. But that is what we currently use. We also do, Nyack Hospital does also have a behavioral section of their hospital that a lot of people from the county actually go there as well. So we do have interaction there as well. Related to number one, do 911 operators have the ability, resources, and/or training to divert calls to other mental health agencies? What we have the ability to at this time is to contact the BERT team, but we do not screen calls. If somebody calls for assistance, we don't screen them and try and determine what level of, their behavioral health crises is at that point. We would normally send an officer there to evaluate it at this time, or call BERT directly. And they do have, many times they'll go out on their own, and if they determine they need our help, then they call us, and we would go there, either stand by to assist them or help them however they deem would be appropriate. While we no longer have community policing in Orangetown, has there been any consideration to bring it back? We don't have a community policing unit, but we do have different programs that I would think would fall under community policing. DARE, youth court, things such as that would all fall under community policing, but actually having a unit of officers that are community police officers, we don't have that. That was lost several years ago. We actually used to have a foot officer in Pearl River and one in Nyack. We lost the one in Pearl River, I would say probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and the one in Nyack maybe about 4 years ago. But that was basically in the reduction of our staffing. That's where we lost those units. We had, over time, we'd lost, we had a traffic unit that was disbanded several years ago as well. What diversion programs does the town have, and are there others we can consider? Currently, we do have our youth court, which works well for our people in high school or younger age throughout the town. We participate in Hope Not Handcuffs program, and we also, I'm not sure if we currently have the misdemeanor drug court for the county, but we have had it for a number of years. I know Judge Loftus was instrumental in that. At the misdemeanor drug court, the county also has a felony drug court. They're run through the district attorney's office and the court systems, but we do participate in that as well. What training is in place for de-escalation? That's through the Rockland County Police Academy. As we move forward, I feel the training gets better each time, but we've come a long way from probably where we were several years ago, because it is being incorporated more and more into our routine training that we have. Do we have any community outreach programs? Again, that kind of goes with the earlier question. We have Hope Not Handcuffs. We have a DARE program. We have SROs in 2 of the school districts. We have youth court, and we do one of our more successful programs is our Operation Medicine Cabinet. We do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People can turn in their medications. We do push that heavily on our social media, and it really does get a lot. We have, over the last couple of years, we've probably had 1,000 pounds of drugs turned in from people from just their homes that they need to get rid of to make their environment at home more safe. What reporting requirements and/or internal review do we have for use of force incidents? We do have a use of force procedure. The officers have to notify a supervisor. The supervisor does a report. Actually, I'm not going to get too far into that question because Captain Shannon is going to answer it when he
Okay.
does his presentation. So it's very important, but I think he's going to spend a little more time
Okay.
than is needed with right now for this part. Do we have general orders that require officers to report misconduct of other officers? Captain Shannon's going to handle that also. Does the town have an easy, accessible process for the public to report complaints of misconduct? Yeah, Captain Shannon will handle that also, but just very briefly on that, Pastor McLaughlin had brought it up, I believe it was in the December meeting, and what we thought was probably a easily accessible process, we determined probably wasn't as easily accessible as it should be, and we made some adjustments to that, but Captain Shannon will touch on that. Does OPD maintain a stop data from traffic stops? Where, when, why, was a ticket given, gender or race? I kind of answered that earlier with one of the other group of questions that we just go by what's on the report from the state to get, whatever information we can gather, because we do feel legally if we try and gather other information that the state's not telling us that we need, it could make the stop longer than is necessary, which could start infringing on people's right. And, and I can certainly understand people not wanting to stick around longer than they need to if they're stopped by the police. Do we have programs in place to support officer wellness and well-being? The town actually has a very good EAP, employee assistance program. We actually moved to a new program, I think it was last year, that the officers actually are very happy with. I believe it's for all town employees. I'm sure that our CSEA employees are happy as well. But we have several times since it was brought in, we've had training on it. We've had all our supervisors go over it individually with their officers, which is something we hadn't done, but we did that, I believe it was over the summer. We had them go through it with everybody one-on-one so they can, spend a little time with them, let them know what the resources are, and let them know that there's nothing wrong with reaching out and getting assistance if needed. It's actually should be encouraged, and that's the way we wanted it. And it also, by doing that, we realize that then everybody gets to read through the material, and what they might not realize today, they may realize it a week from now, or maybe they realize it in another officer. And I think anything we can do in that area, and I do commend the town for going to this program, because I think it's certainly going to be helpful to many people. And I'll let Captain Shannon go to number 2 on the agenda now, unless anyone has any specific questions right now. Okay.
Well, I think that's been covered. I think, because this was back from October, I wrote this, so, yeah. Well, whatever, we'll get. Okay. Captain gets all the good stuff.
Good evening. For those who don't know me, I'm Captain Shannon. Pastor McLaughlin did bring up a point back early on about people not being comfortable coming in to make a complaint. So we reviewed it, and we currently have now put our civilian complaint forms on our website. So now we have 3 ways the public can make a complaint of misconduct if they feel. One is come to the station in person and speak to a supervisor. The second type would be online, if you want to fill out the forms. And the third is if you want to come here, we can hand you the forms and you can bring them home and fill them out. So we did take that into consideration when Pastor McLaughlin did bring it up. So we now have moved it on to online format. Just so you know, the process that's involved, obviously depending on the seriousness of the complaint or allegation, it's forwarded to the squad lieutenant who does investigate it, does a preliminary investigation on it. And if it's of something that can be handled at the squad level, he will then make recommendations to the administration, discipline, whether that would be counseling or warn and admonish, or if it's a training issue. And then he would forward it to us, whether it's a founded or unfounded complaint. Obviously, if it's a very egregious, then the town board would be involved as the police commission to decide what penalty that the officer would face. Moving on, any questions on that one? All right. The first general order that we going to discuss is the physical force, use of physical force. Basically, as per the mandate from New York State, back in September, they wanted us to report all our use of force incidents online to the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services. So any of our use of force reports from September forward have been forwarded to the DCJS through their portal. The use of force report is completed in each incident where there's a use of force incident needed. And the reason is twofold. One is to obviously make the incident on record, make a report of record. And the second one is to basically evaluate if the proper use of force was used. Was it effective? Was it performed correctly? Was it within our policy and procedure? And the other issue is a training issue. We look at, is what we're doing effective? So once an incident occurs, is a use of force form filled out by the officer. He advises the supervisor at the time. The supervisor investigates, does a use of force report, supervisor's use of force report, and that is forwarded to the use of force coordinator, who reviews each use of force incident. And then he determines whether there's any changes that need to be done, or if any policies need to be changed, or if it's, was it effective use and properly used. With that, we did add, let's back up. Nobody in the Orangetown Police Department has ever been trained, shown to do a chokehold or to restrict the blood flow in somebody's neck. However, we did add it to our use of force policy. I'll give you a brief summary of it. Chokeholds and obstruction of breathing or blood circulation, defined as the application of pressure to the throat, windpipe, neck, or blocking the mouth or nose of a person in a manner that may hinder breathing, reduce the intake of air or blood circulation, is prohibited by the members of the Orangetown Police Department. That's something we added to our use of force policy. We've never shown or trained on it. However, we felt the need to put it in there.
And we just did add to that is we went by the guidance from New York State on that policy language that's in there. That's what has been recommended from New York State. So we incorporated it into our policy. Like I said, even though, like Captain Shannon said, we don't train on the use of chokeholds. We never, I've been doing this for 33 years. I've never been trained how to do that. So it's not something that we have that we practice with, but it is in conformance with what the state wants us to have in our policy.
We also added the duty to intervene. I'll give you a brief summary of that. Any officer present and observing another officer using force that he or she reasonably believes to be clearly beyond that which is objectively reasonable under the circumstances shall intercede to prevent the use of unreasonable force if and when the officer has a realistic opportunity to prevent harm. So basically, it's another mandate with the duty of the officer to intervene at a scene where the reasonableness of the force is unreasonable. So an officer who observes another officer use force that exceeds the degree of force as described, what I just did, shall promptly report these observations to a supervisor.
There's one thing additional. Are you going to say the additional part?
Okay.
The additional part was they also need to take corrective actions in it. So they have to report it, but they also, the duty to intervene is to stop what is believed to be an unreasonable act by the other officer. And that's, again, from New York State guidance to put that in our policies.
Just so the state mandates that you have use of force training once a year. Here in Orangetown, we do it twice a year. So twice a year, the officers are reinforced on the proper use of force training. It happens when we go to firearms, and it's 16 hours of training a year when we're only mandated to have 8. There's all the changes we did to the use of force policy. Is there any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I just want to, so for argument's sake, I come in and I fill out a complaint that I think there was a, use of force, whatever. I'm a citizen. And then you guys do what you do in the police department. Do you let the person know who filed the complaint what happened? Do you not let them know?
You would let them know. It's like there's so many different things that could occur. So you would let them know that action was taken. If it was, you would let them know if it was deemed to be unfounded. If it, if for some reason, whatever their complaint was, turns out that there was no way that it could have happened. They said, Officer Smith did something and Officer Smith's been on vacation for 3 weeks. We would at that point we would still investigate, and, we would let them know this was an unfounded complaint. We would let them know if we felt it was founded. We would tell them it was founded, and we wouldn't give them all the details on what penalty or discipline was made. But if there was, we would also let them know if it was something that, was a training issue, things like that. We would be able to let people know.
Okay, and I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. Presuming you came back and you said, look, it's unfounded. I'm guessing that at that point, they either have to go hire a lawyer. I mean, there's no appeal process or anything, review process within the police department or within the town?
Well, within the town, anybody could always, I would think, go through the town attorney's office if they had an issue. They didn't feel comfortable coming to the police department. I know in the past, there's been, things along those that happen there. I mean, I'm sure you're well aware people contact you all the time with different things as well. But there is, they could always reach out to the supervisor's office, as the government, the head of the government.
Wrong answer. No, I'm kidding.
But also the other thing, if it's an allegation of a crime or something like that, the district attorney's office would be the place for them to go as well.
Does do any members have any questions for the chief or the captain? It's kind of tricky because they're muted. I don't know how we would know. How do we know? Oh, they can unmute themselves. Okay.
The
Donnie,
second,
Donnie, you trying to ask a question? You're muted. Wait, let's see. It's him? Don, you have to unmute yourself. You want to text me? This system is the worst. We're switching our virtual system. Dennis, you want to say something?
No, I'm trying to unmute Don.
You what? Oh, you're.
The other general order we reviewed was the deadly physical force, and the change there was the New York State mandate that it is now on the police department to notify the Attorney General of any deaths with the police. It was usually the DA to notify the AG to investigate any police deaths, but right now they've changed it to that's the responsibility of us to notify the Attorney General. We put that into policy. The general order on sexual assault investigations. Officers shall advise all sex crime victims of the availability of the Crime Victims Bureau. We also added in there the Center for Safety and Change Crime Victim Services, their hours, and the 24-hour hotline. We also added in there that to notify the District Attorney Special Victims Unit. I think that was District Attorney Walsh's new unit he made, and that should be done at the earliest point in the investigation.
I think I'm unmuted.
You are.
Yay, I figured it out. Must have been Dennis's psychopath got me going, found it. Just a couple questions and comments. I think one of the initial questions that Chief was responding to about the commitment to diversity was not about the 8 people that are diverse that represent the diversity in the department, but it was about the department itself. So, and then you did answer it, but just so you know that you said that you go by civil rights law, the civil service law. So if we want to have some sort of statement about wanting to diversify our workforce in the police department, my understanding is that we would have to do that in this report. We would have to say we want to see civil service regulations changed in order to allow that to happen. Is that right?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not sure how that would be done. I'm not like, yeah, I just don't know. I don't know if it's like if civil service would change that. I'm just not sure who would.
Yeah, they might not. they might not, but
Right. No, but I'm not sure if they're the ones that would decide that or if it's done at a different level or branch of the government
okay.
that would make those decisions. I don't know who.
I would go, again, whether they take it or not, I think it's basically the statement that we are committed to try to diversify our police department. And
Absolutely.
I can certainly speak for the chief and myself and for Dennis Troyos on here, that our board is committed to it. There's no doubt about it. If we need to say it, we'll say it. But, I know, in my first year, I did outreach. I reached out to the NAACP. I reached out to the NIACS and, try to get word out about the police test was coming out. I did as much as I could, and then they canceled the test on us. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm speaking for the
I
town
just
board.
want you to know, I've always felt that way, and I've actually recommended a couple people that have been looked at very seriously. So I don't have a question about it. I just wondered if that's what we needed to put in the report. I'm not questioning our commitment. I'm just wondering if that's something that we should put in the report.
Absolutely.
That we need, if we need changes in laws that allow us to do that more, that would be something in the report. But again, it's not a criticism at all of our department. It's just what would we put in the report to make that more of a.
Actually, the question, maybe we could ask Rockland County personnel who the people are or what group it would be that we would need to make our recommendations to. That could be helpful.
Okay, thank you. One of the other questions was about diversity training, and you answered it really very succinctly, but I'm wondering if the training is how to deal with how when you have a situation you respond to it, or is there diversity training about how do I get along with a diverse workforce, with people of color that I'm working with or women that I'm working with? Is there that kind of training, or is it more when I'm dealing with someone in my job that how should I be sensitive to it?
Well,
Does that make
I'll just jump in real quick. Just town-wide, we have certain training that we do. I don't remember. I've taken it on both, workplace violence and like harassment, not even necessarily sexual harassment. I'm going to presume there's some level of it in there.
State law that you have to take it, but this is outside of so there's diversity training that's done in the county, and I think and I don't know that necessarily, we've had our whole village board go for it, and it was very helpful for us to understand how we responded to our public. So if the diversity training is not about how do we work together, but is more about how we respond, I would suggest it in the report that if we're going to have a commitment to a diverse workforce, we should have a commitment to diversity training as well.
Absolutely.
I'll mute myself.
I agree with you, Mayor.
Okay.
Okay, just one last general order. We revised is the jail procedures, searches, and arrest processing. Basically, it's once again, a duty to intervene. When circumstances dictate, an officer will call for the response of emergency medical services, render basic first aid, perform CPR, administer oxygen, deploy Narcan, deploy defibrillator, call for the assistance of mental health professionals, and arrange for medical and mental health evaluations. Every member has a duty to provide care, to notify a supervisor of any known or suspected medical or mental health issues, and intervene on behalf of a person in custody if they observe a need for care. Any personnel that observes actions that are contrary to this policy must act to correct the situation, notify an on-duty supervisor, and document all actions taken. So basically, we have somebody in custody and they're having an issue while here. It is, and we have in the past, it's not like we haven't done this. If they have a medical issue, we'll call the medics. We have had prisoners go up to the hospital, but it's just now we added the duty to intervene. If we do have a questionnaire for your mental health, that's part of New York State. It's an intake form, and it's a suicide screening form to be exact. So there's a bunch of questions on there, and if they answer too many questions in the negative, then they're going to be watched 24 hours, or we're going to call for the BERT team to come evaluate them. And the other change we made was in regards to gender. In situations where an arrestee's gender is not immediately apparent, or an arrestee objects to the gender of the officer assigned to perform the search, supervisor will assign an officer of the gender requested by the arrestee. Obviously, and under no circumstances shall the officer search an arrestee for the purpose of determining gender. We added the gender part to the general order. I think that's all I have.
That's it?
That's
Okay,
it.
so that kind of covers, some of the basic changes that we have, or we are in the process of instituting, that fall in line with the police reform mandates. Which I think, it's surprising that some of it hasn't been in there prior to this, but I think it's a good thing, because when it does get put in, we go through all these general orders. Whenever we make changes, we go and reinforce to the officers, what it is. We explain why. So I think anytime that we do that and we hit on an issue that is of importance, it's never a bad thing. So it's kind of like an ongoing training sometimes when you bring these changes up. So I think that kind of covers this portion of it, the general orders portion of this reform.
Okay, any members have questions? It's so funny looking at the little boxes with the little letters. Okay, then I'm going to thank the chief and the captain. That was very, very thorough. And we will move on to the next couple of items on the agenda. The next is just for notice purposes. I think, as most of you know, there's another group that is formed. It's the People's Panel on Policing in Rockland. They had one public meeting, that virtual meeting that I attended in December. They're having their next meeting tomorrow night at 7:00. It's virtual, so I gave you all the information there. They have a guest speaker, whatever. I have been somewhat in communication with some of the members of the panel, trying to really just coordinate what they're doing and how we can incorporate it in what we're doing. So I know they're working on some kind of report. I'm just urging them that they get us the report in time, so that we can actually take it into consideration as we're drafting our plan. And I'll keep you, apprised. The last meeting we're going to have, I had actually scheduled a conference call with some of the members, and then it got canceled at the last minute. So I have not had any real direct communication with them in a couple of weeks. But tomorrow night I will attend the meeting, and it's there if anybody wants to attend too. The next one is the Association of Towns is hosting a webinar. This is in collaboration with the governor's office, and it's strictly geared towards the report that we're working on. Now, normally you have to be a member of the Association of Towns to go to the webinar. We spoke to the woman, and she is willing to allow any members of our committee that want to go. It's Thursday morning at 10. I'll be going on. It's basically with the governor's office. So I think that will give us some clarity on some of the procedural issues we're trying to, you know, come up with. So I don't know, Allison, do they need to reach out to get a password or anything? Do we know how it's gonna work, or can they just log in through this code here? They just registered to it. Okay, okay. Mr. McGowan's running out, just as he's got to take a call, so John's leaving. He's got
Thank you.
county business to attend to. Okay. Next, Tuesday night, we decided that'd be a good time for us to make a presentation to the town board. Dennis Troy's been involved, but the rest of the town board doesn't know what we've been doing or what we're at, so we just figured we would give them an update, progress on what we're doing, how we're, you know, what's happening, give them a chance to answer, ask questions. And I did, if there's any public, you know, the public can comment at that time, although we don't have a draft plan yet. But, so that's next Tuesday at 6:30. Then I wanted to have at least one more, you know, another public forum, but I wanted to do extensive kind of outreach to the high schools, to the NIAC Center, to the Pride Center, to, you know, any other organization you think would want to kind of just have a chance to weigh in on what we're doing, to give us their feedback. I'll do some outreach, but I was proposing the 16th, the evening of the 16th. So unless anybody has a strong objection or has any comments, I was just going to go ahead and schedule that for, I think we're good at 6 o'clock on the 16th. And it will be all virtual. And that would probably be our last real public, well, until we do the plan, and then they get to review the plan. So as the, you know, we said the plan is due by April 1. It sounds like it's far away, but we're already at February 2. So I think, you know, I'm going to ask everybody after the meeting on the 16th, if they could start drafting something up that they would like to see incorporated in the plan. I know I've come up with some ideas. So if you want to give written comments, you know, if you have questions, you reach out to the chief. But basically, we have to start getting the plan drafted. So I'm asking that any of your comments or suggestions be provided to us by February 23rd, because we do have to have the town board approve the plan, has to be adopted. So we don't, it really just gives us March to kind of really pull it together. We have to have a public hearing on the plan. So we really, you know, we're going to find ourselves in March before we know it. So that's really all I have. Does anybody have anything else they want to add, or? No, everybody ready?
Supervisor, just quickly, I know that I've talked it over with you and you're certainly on board with this as well, but we don't want to give the impression that this is just a one-shot deal. Like, we're not going to have everything, you know, in this plan that's needed, you know, by April 1st. We're going to have it, but this is an ongoing process that we need to be committed to. And that's really what, you know, we're looking for here. So, you know, I don't want anyone to think that if they have a great idea on April 2nd, that we can't incorporate it in moving forward. So that's just something I want to point out, that,
Yeah. No, I
to be
appreciate that.
successful, it's got to be an ongoing process.
I appreciate that. And that will actually be something that goes in our whatever plan we have, to say that this needs to be an ongoing process in some form or fashion. But thank you for pointing that out, because we have discussed it, and I've discussed it with Don Hammond. So yeah, absolutely. It's not going to be over on April 1st. So if that's it, nobody has anything else to say, I will wish you all a good night. Going once, going twice. Dennis, you trying to talk? He's muted. This is the worst system, I swear. We're switching to Zoom. We're switching to Zoom in a few weeks.
Just thanking you for running a good meeting, and thanking the captain and the chief for putting the time that they put into incorporating some of the changes into the general orders. I think we're headed in the right direction.
Yep, I agree. Don, did you want to say something? I saw you were unmuted there for a minute.
No, I was just going to try to help Dennis get unmuted like he did me.
I don't want
Thanks
to
for
say
the help,
anything.
Don.
I don't know. You two are more alike than you know. That's all I'm going to say.
That's scary.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Right.